All right, folks, here we are, a first time watch for me. That's right, the 40th anniversary of Trancers coming to America. It came out in 84 in UK, but I was talking with this guy over some cult movie stuff over on my Friday Pops cast, and I told him, listen, if you want to talk about this movie, I mean, we're happy to watch it, give it a go. He really raved about some of the sci-fi elements, some of the different things. So,
hmm
Baron, here we are, brother. Thanks for doing this, my friend.
Well, again, thank you for having me. And of course, as of this recording, you were kind enough to step in for me yesterday on Sunday's edition of Pop Talk, and I'm very thankful for that. So at least Mike wasn't so lonely.
Well, hopefully, folks, you are already subscribed to Pacific 414. I'll try to make sure that that link is in the description as well with Baron stuff so you can guys make sure you are connected. And I listen to the Pop Talk every single week. Depends on what we're doing, when I'm listening, or how I'm listening. But I just saw he was by himself. Just said, hey, listen, if you want another person, I can go in and throw you a good hour or so. And it was a good time. Always a good time hanging out with you guys
Oh
over
yeah,
there doing that kind of thing.
he appreciated greatly. So he was
Yeah.
talking about me about that afterwards, and I said, "So you found Cash's replacement?"
No, I don't know about that, but it was raining, so we couldn't do farm work. We weren't
Yeah,
shopping, so it's like, all right, well, I can hang out with the folks. So it was good to do
yeah,
that. But yeah, Trancers has been a fun experience for me to get to know. Didn't know anything about it. Just saw the poster multiple times over the course of my life. If you had twisted my arm, if like a multiple choice type question, like a dealer, one of those trivia questions or something like that, and you gave me multiple choice on Helen Hunt's first film, might have been able to pick that out of a crowd. That's probably the extent of it. Didn't know much about Trancers. So, but
Mhm.
with that, my brother, talk a little bit about like, did you see this when this came out? Was this new for you, or
Oh
when did
well,
you experience this?
well. First of all, I just want to say one thing. Isn't that an awesome poster? They knew how to do posters back then, especially for these lower budgeted films. I mean, how can that not just kind of grab you a little bit going, I want to know what this is about. And that's just the thing. Now, I can't, yeah, I saw it back in the 80s. I can't remember if it was on cable or if it was on VHS. Going to the video store and seeing
Hmm.
that on the shelf. Either way, saw it and I fell in love the first time I saw this movie. This is a perfect example of those films that we had going on in the 80s that were low budget, lower production value, but in many ways they outshined the bigger budget stuff back then, and they certainly do so today.
Hmm.
Um, a strong, I think it was a strong story. I thought elements were, with the science fiction, there took different twists on things. There's some other aspects, as we go along. That even rewatching it the other day, uh, came to the conclusion of some new thoughts about it. What was so important about this film making it an impact. Tim Thomerson, of course, I became a big fan of his and still am. Then, of course, realizing he was in that Quark series with Richard Benjamin back in the 70s as Gene/Gene, amongst other things. The same year that this came out here in the States, he was in Iron Eagle with Louis Gossett Jr.
Mm.
And was it C. Thomas? I can't remember who the kid was in that movie. But he was in there. He was the father that was kidnapped and trying to rescue in that one. Um, and then learning more about him, him being a stand-up comedian, he was friends with Brian James, the late great Brian James, I should say. I would love to have seen those two together in a film, definitely. And even when sometimes watch that Buzzer channel with the old game shows, and they started like a year or two ago. They started showing the Hollywood Squares match game hour that they had for about
Hmm.
a year, and he was one of the guests on there. It's like, whoa, Tim Thomas! I didn't know he was on here. So he, he, this film, of course, we call it Full Moon. It wasn't. It's Empire. Then later on, when Full Moon came into existence, of course, that's when Jack Death came back with 1.5, Transfer 1.5, City of Angels, which was part of an anthology film that they had going. Then, of course, the various sequels. But if it wasn't for Transfers, we wouldn't have had Full Moon. There's
Good
definitely no doubt
stuff.
about that. And of course, he came back as Doll Man with Full Moon. With
I'm gonna I'm gonna make an adjustment here on this.
Oh, I don't blame him.
Oh, it's all
Don't you?
you know. I don't want my head to be right on top of my name. I don't know how to make it.
I know that drives me crazy when it happens to me. See, you need a longer name so that your little thing is smaller. Like I got you.
There we go. It's a little better. Okay. Yeah, I hadn't seen it. I'll give everybody a little heads up here. It's set in the future where, things are just kind of off. Like it's sort of kind of like a, future cop type thing. He's a retired police officer. They call themselves troopers in the 23rd century. There is this criminal mastermind named Whistler who has figured out how to hijack their time traveling mind transfer technology to scan themselves somewhere else. And they search out these people called Trancers. Let me see if I can pull up a photo here, folks. When you see a Trancer, it's kind of like a zombie-looking being who is under the mind control of this Whistler person. They can basically be told or forced to do things they wouldn't normally do, and basically behave in violent manner for the most part in this film. And
That
they're
looks like
sort of
Jake
like,
Paul, by the way.
I'm sorry,
Looks like Jake Paul
he does
or
look
his
like Jake
brother.
Paul, indeed.
Yeah, I know.
Uh, the film has sort of a triad of leaders who basically recruit Jack Death to be the person to go back and follow this Whistler person into, and they follow their own heritage, which I actually think is one of the more clever elements of the science fiction. It's almost like you could hijack your DNA lineage in the timeline or something like that. Kind of is a really cool concept. Anyway, he goes back and now he's trying to catch this Whistler guy in the past. It really was a lot of very clever sci-fi elements that are kind of threaded together.
Hmm.
Were there sort of inspirations that you could point to where you think they kind of came up with this concept? I was thinking about old Star Trek, and I figured that's another reason why talking to you would be so much fun. So it feels like some old Trekky type stuff is what they were capitalizing on, in my opinion. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, yeah, in some senses, I mean, going back in your own lineage is definitely a unique thing. You really never really saw much of that, and still don't today
Hmm.
with that time travel. You're gonna now, possess an ancestor's body. After that, of course, we had like Quantum Leap.
Hmm.
The caveat on that one is it wasn't your direct lineage of family, but it was within the time that you were, from when you were born up to the present day of when you did that leap. So he couldn't go, Sam couldn't go back beyond when he was born. Uh, no, that's about the closest I can have. Of course, Quantum Leap came, I believe, after that. Um, so I don't, when it comes around to like the Star Trek, uh, yeah, they got that element with some of the stuff with time travel, the different forms of it. But really, there's no comparison on the fact that they're in the 23rd century. uh, One of the great things is they left so many things ambiguous
Hmm.
in this, especially in the future. And one of the problems that films like this have with me, well, not to particularly this, but stuff that came along later, is that the future or the universe that the hero's coming from seems much more interesting than what the rest of the story is. Like, can we not travel back to like now? Can we stay in the future? I want to know more about this world. What helps though is they kept it so ambiguous. It's like what happened. We know that that obviously there's something where meat and coffee is hard. Oh, we're not. They don't make mentions of a nuclear apocalypse. We know that L.A. got kicked into the sea or the ocean, I should say, because Jack Death was swimming around through L.A. And that's how he kind of knew some routes of it because I swam this way. uh, the one thing I can associate, and I know his name's dirty name right now, but he still got to give credit where credit's due on this one. Uh, Neil Gaiman stated that this was a comic book movie,
Hmm.
and of course, this was before people were talking about comic book movies that were not based off of comic books. They started talking about that with Darkman,
Hmm.
but uh, really, Trancers. There we go. Boom. It was starting out with that. Where you had like a comic book film that was not based off a comic. And the perfect example is when you start seeing the pedigree of the writers after they did this. they went on to do comic book style shows and movies. The one was involved in the 1990 Flash. Uh, Others, you start taking a look at the others and what they were in. And what's so important is what for the last 5 or so years, maybe even longer than that, we all been complaining about the state of superhero films, how stupid, how uh, they are, the stupid humor, everything across the board on that. And then you come back to this. It's a simple story. It's not relying on blowing stuff up left and right. The humor isn't forced, it's actually real. And what helps out, of course, Tim Thomerson's comedic timing to be able to play this straight laced character and drop the liners that he has in that film. And helping to work with Helen Hunt on that, where they make a great chemistry in this role with both of them together. This
They
is what a
really do.
comic book film should be. Yeah, they worked really good, I thought, in there. But this is what a comic book film should be. Anyone who's working for DC or working for Marvel should sit down and watch this on a constant play for 24 hours. I mean, if you have to do the Clockwork Orange with them, where they're locked in the chair and your eyes are open, you're putting eye drops in, do it. But
Yeah, it just seemed like Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo really seemed like they kind of got the concept of what would entertain us, and we could have some fun and
mhm,
creative things. And they're very limited with their budget. Obviously, they go on. I think the biggest thing they wrote together was The Rocketeer, which is a
right,
movie that we're going to have on our radar screen for Talk Hard in the
mhm,
next few months. Maybe not. Maybe not. It's going to have anniversary next year, so I don't really want to hold off till next year because most
mhm.
people are not as familiar with Rocketeer as they should. Now, it
Guilty. I
was
have not seen it, so
well, see, that
that's
would be a perfect one for us to talk about then, because I could do that now and then do
yeah,
Talk Hard next year, whatever. So Rocketeer is a
yeah,
fun movie. You're going to
yeah.
feel a very similar vibe. It's going to feel very comic
Mhm,
book and adventure and action with the focus on just having great character story and great ideas, which is what I think
mhm,
Trancers does best with. I mean, you mentioned just briefly like what the future looked like. Um, I love the fact that it feels very noir and Blade Runner and kind of an amalgam of the stuff that we would enjoy.
mhm,
And then this isn't again because the photos are over on IMDb, folks. This is the technology they can use to connect you to the system, and then this is like these capsules, these vials that are inside the handgun that he can use. And he jabs you with one of those, it just zaps you right back to the future. I wasn't totally sure they had buttoned up all of the sci-fi elements. We'll criticize the film a little
right.
later, but I think the general overview of the film is there, and it's just kind of an adventure cat and mouse type thing for him. It feels just an amalgam of all of these sci-fi elements. So there's moments will feel Blade Runner. It'll be moments it's going to feel like Terminator. There's going to be
Mhm,
moments. Well, yeah, Quantum Leap's a great example, by the way. Thanks for bringing that one up because it's a good example too of and then just some of the comic relief type stuff that you see in the '80s. Some of the tropes and gags that you would see that carry on with everything like an Arnold movie, like an Arnold type gag.
right.
Um, and they also don't take themselves too seriously, which is one of my pet peeves with movies that I don't know what you were going for. This one's like there's at least two and one really big moment. My name's Jack Death. It's like what? That's actually your name. Like that's your real name. And then of course in the film later in the middle, the guy's supposed to go with you. And you're like your name is Jack Death. I'm not going with some dude named Jack Death. They're not doing that. So they're playing fast and loose with how we're perceiving the world and the action they're doing. So I think all of that is what is its strongest suit. Um,
Mhm,
I love these shots. I think it was filmed very well. I really
yep.
enjoyed what they were doing for the money. The Transers effect, the zombie effect, which folks, I showed you the one shot. Let me back up here to see if I can try to find Santa Claus again.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
which, by the way, I've already got a clip from this for if you're watching my channel in December of 2025, I 100% guarantee you the lady on the phone calling "There's trouble in North Pole" will be clipped and used because it was hysterical. Dude's
It
fighting
was.
Santa Claus, and it is a great scene. It's filmed in a malls with like a K Jewelers in the background.
Yep.
If you want to know what '80s felt like, you are in that moment 150%.
I was. And you know what's great about that too is how she delivered the line,
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Claus. That was even made it even funnier. The
Mm-hmm.
whole thing. You could because you could see it. It was organic, and good choice to have. Good choice to have. I might have to steal that too for my stuff.
It was a fun line. And so one of the pet peeves I have, and again, it's not really a big issue, but it's one of the pet
Mhm,
peeves I have, and I think it's one of these things. Give me the script for a day. We could have buttoned up
mhm.
a few of these things.
Right.
The body here of Santa Claus disappears, just vanishes. So after they've been zapped as a transer, they just sort of like vanish, right?
Mhm.
That effect's been used for decades. But no one else seems to be phased. Whistler, you would expect, because Whistler's inside this cop's body. No one else is like, "Hey, dude, where'd the body go?" No, there's just no. So I think we would have come up with some sort of explanation there. We would have tried to figure out how to make that a little more believable. The effect was solid. For again,
Oh yeah.
super low budget film, folks. We're talking. I never found a budget on this one. I mean, it's got to be microscopic. It looks like it
Oh
was
yeah.
direct to VHS in '85. So I don't know what was done for the UK, what kind of release it had or didn't have, but
Hmm.
direct to video stuff back then, guys, would just be. I mean, maybe $1 million. Let's just
Hmm.
round a round number. Maybe a million. Probably not, but let's just assume that
Hmm.
I didn't find a budget. But uh,
And of course, back then, $1 million was worth a lot more too. So
oh no, that was. I mean, that's what I was saying. It's a solid movie.
yeah.
And a
No.
great cast, really.
Yeah.
I want to just highlight too on the guy on the right there, Art LaFleur. You
Yeah.
guys will
Great actor.
recognize as the Tooth Fairy from the Santa Claus movies is
Hmm.
probably the thing that most normies you guys will know him from. Um, but if any of you are out there like me, you're like, he's Babe Ruth in Sandlot. He
Hmm.
has an episode I remembered very much in MASH, the TV show. It was one about Father's Day or something, and
Hmm.
it's one I expected and enjoyed. He's
He
just
was
been
an
in a
MP,
lot of
right?
movies. What's that?
He was an MP in that one, right?
I think
Military
so. Yeah,
police.
yeah.
I trying to remember.
It's a great episode. Yeah, he's the
Oh yeah.
MP. He's trying to figure out. Yeah, it's a fun episode, man. It's really good stuff. So I like that.
And the chemistry between those two also was great.
Yeah, so we'll get to it. Okay, again, if you don't want spoilers, guys, I'm going to tell you, it's just this isn't going to be the kind of show for you where I'm going to have to do spoilers because this is my first time reacting. I only watched it once, and then I went back and I watched like 2 or 3 scenes to make sure I kind of picked up some pieces that I felt like I wasn't totally clear on because I didn't want to misspeak. I know Baron will keep me honest, but I didn't. So I don't think I caught this guy's character name, right? McNulty
McNulty. McNulty.
early in the movie. So when he zaps later on into 1985, where Jack Death is, that he's in the body of this little girl. There's this little girl that just comes out of nowhere, lecturing Jack, talking to Jack. He's got to do this. He's got to do that. And I'm like, okay, I didn't understand who this character was from the future. I thought it was the black lady, the technician
Hmm.
that sent him back. I didn't understand it was McNulty until later. So when you see this character, you have to remember that the Tooth Fairy is inside her body lecturing our hero. It was when you get it and it clicks, and at the end of the movie it clicks great and it's hysterical. But the
And
first time it happened, I was like, I don't understand what's happening right now.
I don't know what the director did, but he got a great performance out of her.
Yeah, she was
No,
really
usually,
pretty solid for a kid actor. Yeah.
yeah, and when you have like kid actors and all that, it's usually hit or miss, nowhere's in between, and she nailed it. I mean, even when she came back for some of the later stuff as an older, it was her older, but 1.5, City of Angels, and Trancers too. Uh,
Hmm.
and of course, very capable actress now. I mean, she's still working as is, but you see what she did in that film, and it's like that what made it even more hysterical in some ways when she came in is how she was able to act like Art LaFleur, and he was an acting coach himself, so it makes you wonder, did he help coach her a little bit how to act like him? And she took the lesson. I don't know. I mean, just
I
throwing it
had to
out.
look her up. Her name is Alyson Croft. She actually
Mhm.
was nominated for a lot of youth awards back then. So 86, 87, and 89. She
Mhm.
had done a lot of great TV work. Highway to Heaven, Dallas, Cagney and Lacey, Blue
Mhm.
Skies, Chicago 7. So she won a couple awards as a kid actor and then just basically become like a journey actress
Mhm.
over the course of years, working this whole time on all sorts of different things. And she's still only 49.
Yeah.
She's still got a lot of time left to land a gig and get back out there. And I got to be honest, I'm disappointed because I would have liked to have seen her at some Comic Cons or something, tapping into some of this Trancers love and maybe some of those TV appearances to help build her resume, maybe make some extra cash on the side. Yeah, she was very solid in this for sure.
I think she has done a couple, but she doesn't, boom. I don't know. Is there a lot of people that go out and do? That'd be interesting to see if there is like Transers Con out there, and meet a bunch of Transers running around trying to get Jack Death's autograph
I
before
think
they
it
get
would be
killed.
fun to see if you could get you could get him and maybe someone like Alyson Croft and maybe one other person, and you could have them at an event and you could do a little panel or something like that because it has spawned like six different. I was
Mhm.
shocked at how many sequels there were and all sorts of stuff. So there is a following of some sort, and it would be
Yeah.
kind of fun to at least give them their due. Nothing is to me more important though is to give a lots of love for Helen Hunt. Man, Helen Hunt is
Oh.
phenomenal. You can feel the chemistry, the charisma, the talent. It starts a little slow. You don't totally feel that from some of the early scenes, folks. But
Hmm.
by the time you're through the movie, you're starting to see why she was on As Good as It Gets and Twister and
Hmm.
Castaway and all these different things that she did for years. Obviously, Mad About You is the thing that she's known most for, but
Hmm.
uh, I don't watch Mad About You. I watch Twister. Twister's the one thing that she's in that's in my regular cycle annually. I watch Twister probably every year. My grandson's actually going through a tornado phase, so we've watched it once this
Oh.
year already. So I'm thinking that when he comes back here soon, he'll be ready to watch some more disaster type films, and we'll watch Twister and Twisters again and stuff like that. So,
I
but
always
she
root
was
for the
phenomenal.
evil meteorologists. The evil
She
ones. There's good meteorologists, and you got the evil ones. It's the classic battle between meteorologists.
it's it was a fun element. Um, Before we had sort of like the girl power women boss type thing, she was it,
Mhm.
and she's
Oh
also
yeah.
sweet and kind, lovely and charming. I've never
Hmm.
found her to be particularly like beautiful or hot or anything like that, but she's that classy, beautiful Hollywood leading lady. Has a couple sex scenes without anything foreboding. Like it's great to see we
No.
have all that in a very tasteful way, which is how I think those things should be done. And it lends the fact that more people can watch their product. And this was a very nice, pleasant viewing for that for sure.
Yeah. No nudity that I know of in this entire film.
Mm-mm,
Watching it again,
no,
no nudity. The closest you got is she's putting an outfit on, but you see her from back, so it's more sensual than sexual.
right.
And it's like, well, we've had that going back in films in the 50s and the 40s too. It's titillating. Yeah, you had some foul language in there. No gratuitous violence, right? So you're not seeing guts and gore all over the place. In fact, when they get off the transfers, they're singed.
Yeah, they
They
just
get hit by a
vaporize.
phaser beam. Yeah.
Hmm. No,
Uh,
similar to Star Wars, right? Like my
mhm.
kids were watching Star Wars when they were like 2 years old. There's no blood and guts. Now there
Right.
was no cursing either. This movie does
Yeah.
have some curse words, but it's not. I don't consider this to be profane or graphic. I don't feel like this is
No.
going to be them asking you about something, which is my
Right.
line on using curse language and sexual content. Is it's going to spark conversations that are uncomfortable for parents. Having a few curse words is you telling your kid, "Hey, don't say that. We don't say that." That's one thing. Not
Right.
my favorite, but that's significantly better than. Well, what does that mean when this is happening? Pick your agenda item. I thought the
Well,
movie
and
was done very well in
yeah,
that regard.
and more importantly, is it appropriate to when it's being used?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh yeah, definitely a huge pass if it's appropriate. But if it's
Right.
just, oh, we're going to throw in some swear words just to throw swear words in, no, 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 no. You're not being original at all. It's garbage. And going back a couple paces, you're talking about polishing the script in that scene where Santa Claus disappears. Oh, spoiler alert, by the way, folks. You know, we kind of can gather it by ourselves later on because he has control of several police officers' minds. And what it would take and was is a quick little line to let you know that the ambulance guys and the cops there are already under his control.
Good point.
It just all it would take just a quick little line, and maybe they had one. Maybe they just overlooked it. I don't know, but
You're
see, fixed
100%
right
right.
there. Yeah,
You're
just
100%
one
right.
quick fix.
And actually, that would have been easier to set up later because there is an officer that he's confronting with. He's having this banter back, like "You're a transer, you can fight it." You could have
Hmm.
easier made that palatable for the audience, especially again. I'm always using the term normie.
Hmm.
to follow along with some of these complex science fiction concepts because not
Right.
everyone is plugged into that the same way you or I would be. So I think that's good. But this was a great sequence. It is intense and gives you a lot more information about what's going on. It presents all of the facts for Helen Hunt's character, so she knows what's
Yep.
going on. Yeah, good stuff. Really enjoyed this for sure.
And
Um,
which I think kind of helped me talk, kind of see about how in the beginning there, Helen Hunt, whatnot. Well, I think what helped the fact is you just realizing that they're coming off of a one night stand. They don't know each other, and now she's starting to freak out a little bit because Phil is not acting like the Phil that picked her up, and now
yep.
calling himself Jack, and then all this other stuff, saying that I grew up here, but I don't know where anything is now. You know,
Yeah,
so it,
it's
it starts organically growing. It's like we don't want it instantaneously that they're buddies.
yeah. I would love to see this polished up a little bit to make that a little cleaner, but I think it's all there for you, and they do a great job of just kind of moving you through this. And it's one of the films that I would say would benefit a lot when you're rewatching it again because you already kind of know the general gist. You understand what's going on. You'll pick up on more stuff. And I would say this: the film's strength is it's science fiction. Alvin, the strongest thing about
Yeah,
this movie is that you're a science fiction fan. Is the set designs, the concepts, what was kind of going for that noir feeling that it puts him in. I mean, he immediately is in 1985 and he starts greasing his hair back, and it was just
yep.
like so funny because I
And
remember
I
that phase. Yeah,
and I know why you're wearing that hat right now because dry hair is for squids, and you don't want to be a squid.
I wear the hat because it actually got to be like 50 today outside for some reason after being like 80 yesterday or day before the rain, and I'm like I actually got chilly this morning and I have little to no hair so I get cold, so I wear a hat most of the time anyway. I know someone actually, I think it was Vex, right? I think it was Vex who was like,
Okay.
"Hey, pops, I didn't even recognize you with your hat because it was probably pulled down a little more. I've kind of transitioned into I don't know. You think, Baron? I think I'm starting to feel my place as being possibly one of the new captains on Deadliest Catch. That's what I think. I think I'm starting to
Well,
be able to have that look. Yeah,
or either that, or grow that beard out some more. You could be Randy Quaid's stunt double, or stand-in.
interesting concept. We're gearing up for Santa for the end of the year. I will have to get that length
Oh,
in there like Baron has,
hmm,
but yeah, right now I definitely look a little bit more of a less disheveled Randy Quaid. But yeah,
yeah.
uh,
And
but
just don't be like Santa Claus in this movie. That's all I gotta ask.
no, I have no desire to attack people randomly at the mall in front of a K Jewelers. So look at the shots, though, folks. I mean, listen, for a
Oh yeah.
uber low budget direct to DVD type film, I was very impressed by all of this. I don't know. I didn't have time. I should have. I'm falling out of the job because I normally have time to get into trivia and where things were
Mhm.
shot and did they recycle sets, and I didn't do that yet. And I'm actually intrigued by Trancers because I feel like there's a lot more story of how this actually got made on a pretty low budget, and yet having something that it doesn't surprise me that it kind of spawned some cult following for sure.
Oh, definitely. I
Yeah.
mean, me right off the bat, and I think in this scene too. You see his car, but there's another car that's parked in front there. I think that is straight from Blade Runner. I think they
hmm
they
hmm
either was a prop rental or whatnot. But it's like I'm looking at it. Oh yeah, that's one of the background cars from Blade Runner. It fits it, but it doesn't seem like it's forced in from Blade Runner.
Yeah, that's true. It definitely does not feel forced at all, and I think that that's the beauty of this. It feels like you have people who are really interested in capturing the right feel and flavor for those Blade Runner fans rather than just trying to be a cheap knockoff. So it didn't put that car front and center, like you said. Like it may just be, an extra car or something like that, but it didn't try to take over the movie. Like it wasn't thrust in our face like, "Art, look at us. We're like Blade Runner now." It's like this film doesn't ever try to be like anything. It's
No,
just what it is.
and that's what's so fantastic about this, which is one of my problems I have with with YouTubers out there that make fan films on out there. It's like stop, watch this movie and see what they did with an original idea and they ran with it.
Mm-hmm.
but they had it in the feel of. In other words, it feels like a superhero film, a comic book film. It feels like something that you'd open the pages of Marvel or DC and it's now on screen, even though there wasn't a comic until after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, get your creative juices out there. These guys, even afterwards, were not resting on their laurels, as you stated. The Rocketeer, of course, in the Flash, of course, the one went in and played in the Flash universe for the 1990 series, great series by the way, and such. But what they did was on their own originality. So I challenge every YouTuber out there that sits back and goes, "Oh, I want to do a Batman fan film. I want to do a Star Wars." Stop. I know it's tempting. Trust me, I know it's very tempting because we want to play in those universes. But let's see what you got because Trancers, you could do the new Trancers that launches you into who knows what that Hollywood so dearly needs. And that's what's so great
I couldn't
about
agree
that
with you.
era.
I couldn't agree with you more about the fan thing too, because you're going to be limited on what you can do and how you can monetize it because you have all these restrictions. So let's see, we're going to do Batman. Just don't do Batman. You have some sort of dude dressing up as vigilante at night. Maybe you have to come up with a different name. Maybe you don't name him at all. He's a Batman-esque without being called Batman. If
Hmm.
you had a Joker card, make a gag that it's like, dude, what? Dude, he thinks he's freaking like he's from the DC universe or something? What kind of nonsense is this? This is stupid. Like, it's like just I
Right,
would play into it without going there and just make your own thing where you're in
right.
some sort of universe that's your own. It may have similarities to that. People that pretend to be like those characters, for instance, and that's fine.
Mhm.
Just don't limit yourself and constrain yourself by being, oh, I'm making a Predator fan film. It's like, oh, dude, like,
Mhm.
what are you doing? Like, don't make, well, first off, Predator, it would be a fun one to do because you have so many things about that island and that area and the
Mhm.
crossover from that writers and all the different things that you could do that existed in this area of
Mhm.
dinosaur creatures, whatever, commandos, and all these different things that happened. It would be easy to come up with a fan universe thing. There's something out there hunting us. Uh, yeah. But yeah, this was
Right.
great. Set design is beautiful.
Yeah.
Again, really good for a uber low budget film. Really,
You know,
really interesting.
and what I find fascinating about this is when you're in the future, everything's dark except for one scene. And that's when he's out there on the shores of Lost Angels, coming out of the water with all this goodies.
Mhm.
It's daylight. And that's the only time in the 23rd century, correct me if I'm wrong, only time in the 23rd century that you actually see a bright, shiny, blue skies, whatever, not dark and depressing. Yeah, you see the ruins in the water, but it's more fascinating and depressing. But the rest of it is it's like at night or it's dark or got that oppressive feeling over it. You feel like that the scientist who is going to send you back in time is about ready to break out in song with Tony Orlando. Oh, wait a moment, she did. Never mind.
Well, this is fun too because he comes up and he pulls out a street sign. It says Sunset Boulevard. So
Yeah.
everything is underwater, but never becomes why it's underwater. We don't have some sort of global warming conversation. We don't have some sort of environmental disaster, nuclear war. It's happened. This is how people live now,
Hmm.
and we kind of move in that direction. And that's just when he gets confronted. Hey, listen, we need your help, whatever. Yeah.
Hmm.
So really, really good stuff. Really enjoyed that.
Even even those uniforms, you take a look at it. That's like they did. I wonder if they kind of got the idea for Star Trek Troopers uniforms off of that because they looked like the right out Star Trek Troopers, but better.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know, but but the thing is, it has that very authoritarian, uh, dystopian, oppressive rulership, feel to and vibe to it.
Yeah, here, let me pull up a shot here, guys. We talked about how Santa and other bodies disappear when
Hmm.
they're shot as a trancer. This is what actually happens to them. They kind of
Hmm.
vaporize this way. This was that effect. That was really, really cool. Um, yeah, just
That was
so
her.
so this is one of the opening fun elements with. He doesn't really want to be involved with this whole event, of course. Reluctant
Hmm.
hero trope.
Right.
And he's at a diner. He thinks so and so is a trancer. Asks for your ID, whatever. It turns out to be this little old lady. The way it was fun. I
Hmm.
will be honest. I gave it a thumbs high. I enjoyed that part. It made me laugh. It made me fun. I had a good time.
Kind of threw
Uh,
you off a little bit.
and
Oh
this
yeah,
was
there's
that.
our
This is
sigil.
that. This was that shot of Helen Hunt from behind. We don't have anything that's too Revealing, just very sensual, very classy. Nothing that's
Right.
too risque or anything like that.
And going back to that scene, of course, what follows through that scene, the reveal of the city to the hero,
Hmm.
is not overpowering.
Hmm.
It's you don't have that build up, that music that we normally get today when the reveal is given to the hero and they have almost overplayed. It's understated,
Hmm.
but which I think it works even better because here's a guy. This is his first experiences in the past that he loves so much. He's now become, calls himself the tourist now. But he's going out there looking out onto the city. It just looks plain and normal, but you can tell by his look that this is amazing. We don't need to be told by effects or the cinematography or anything else. It's Tim Thomerson's reaction to it, all about how you can see that this is really pounding home. And I think that works out the understatement of that scene far better than many other reveals that you have.
Man, and you're so on point with the music cue thing. I am so over movies and TV shows not just letting their story and their actors carry what's happening. They have to give you some sort of emotional cue. They can't just
Hmm.
have just I'm so sick of it. Especially whenever it's in conflict to how I actually feel. When they give me an emotional cue and I'm like, I'm not feeling that. I don't care about this character. I don't care about that character at this moment. Or it's like it creates a bigger miss when it's off
Hmm.
because you've forced it so much.
Right.
Yeah, no, Trancers doesn't do that. Trancers plays pretty evenly paced on our, these two basically are going through the 80s, following some clues. I would say I had a little bit of a criticism with, so there's the three main sort of council heads. One of them is
Yeah.
played by Richard Herd, who I
Hmm.
remembered immediately from things like V, the miniseries, among other things. But
Yeah. Admiral Paris.
yeah, he his demise into the 80s, whatever they did, it's
Hmm.
just off camera somewhere. There's a little clue that kind of messes things up. Jack
Hmm.
Hurd has the conflict with Santa. He leaves behind his little photo lead of where the Jack Hurd ancestor is, and
Hmm.
then Whistler takes care of him off camera somewhere. So I'm a little disappointed that wasn't a cutaway. That's like that was the Terminator trope. The Terminator shows up and knocks on the door and kills the lady, like the Sarah Connor. That's not the Sarah Connor
Hmm.
that we're looking. We didn't get that piece. I think it would have helped the normie in me a little bit to kind of follow along. It's an off camera kind of thing that happens.
I
Again.
think what they were trying to do with that is to be different and actually have a true surprise. Because if you had that cutscene where you see the Terminator walking in and taking out Sarah Connor or the roommate or such like
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
it works great for certain elements. In
Hmm.
some ways, though, start losing that element of surprise. So it's like, hey, let's do something a little different. Now we can argue how well it worked, but at least the A for effort, I think myself personally, is there for that. That way, when he does, do that kick in the hallway, and it does kind of catch you off guard just a little bit. Maybe as a viewer, a normie thinking, "Oh, he got there just in time," and there's going to be something that happens, and there's going to be this big, but it doesn't turn out the way you think it might be. So I like
Right.
that
Yeah.
surprise element. Maybe the execution of it maybe could have been a little better.
Yeah, I think it would have been easier to have Jack show up or realize he didn't even have the clue. It's just never happened. It's never brought up at all. He has the conflict with Santa. The
Yeah.
clue, he loses his lead, and then he's basically deleted, and it's nothing's ever talked about other than the fact that he's gone now. But yeah, look at young Richard Herd, man. I was like, wow, look how young he
Oh
looks.
yeah. Yeah, he does.
Um,
You're almost expecting half his face get ripped off, and there's green scales underneath,
yeah, wait for it to actually be his big reveal.
which is about the same time that he did V was when this film was being done. I mean, what a great character actor he was.
Yeah,
And he
he
looked
has a
horrible.
nice long career. I think V definitely overlapped or came right before this. One of the two. It's just yeah, definitely for sure. Depending on how the production schedules lined up. But yeah, like Tim Thomerson, look at how great he looks. He's just pulling off these scenes one after another. I think very well. Helen
Hmm.
Hunt does a great job. We've went through some of these photos. Oh, I didn't really care for the little little scooter
Yeah.
guys. Just get real motorcycle. Even if it was Kawasaki's back in the day or something like that. This
Hmm.
was a I felt like this was the budget showing. This was
Right.
somebody who knew somebody who owned these, and that's how they got to use them instead
Hmm.
of getting actual bikes or whatever. And then having the cliche down the steps thing, I think I'm just so over. I
Right.
can't stand that trope.
But the thing is,
But
this when this was done though, it wasn't such an old trope back at
yeah,
that
yeah,
time,
and
and it
yeah,
was amusing because at that time we're used to seeing like Bullet through San Francisco or something
right,
like that,
right.
some fancy car or some fancy other vehicle that they're using. In this case, which brings that level of humor to it, they're on little Vespa scooter type devices, and instead of like a
Which
motorcycle,
which
like you're
which
saying.
weren't as much of a joke then as they are now. I totally get that.
Yeah.
I can own my criticisms. Be a little unfair there.
Well, no,
Um,
and if we did that now today, yeah, you're right on target, right on target. But I'm having you remember. Okay, now I have to step back to 40 years or 30 or 40 years ago, and look through it the eyes of that era, not now, and the evolution of film.
yeah, yeah. I think we have a responsibility with a film, especially like this, because we have two things. We have the 40-year time frame, and then we also have the budget constraints. We have a lot of context that we can try to add to this and try to make everybody appreciate it for what it is.
Hmm.
Um, but I think again, for the budget and for the money, it took me back. I actually also, and again, we're similar enough in age that we probably have. I enjoy movies that do make me go back and realize, oh, I remember those cars were everywhere.
Hmm.
Oh, they're so beautiful. Little
Yeah.
things like that. The cars in the background, um, just little things about it. I think are just always fun for me, and I just have a good time.
Oh.
There's a great Olympic poster on the billboard behind them in this shot, which may be kind of nostalgic as well. Going to the club, being nostalgic over little toys,
Hmm.
all these moments I thought were actually quite enjoyable for sure.
The neon. I mean,
Yeah, just the color palettes and stuff. Like again, this is that era for us. Like you
right.
feel when we rewatch them, we literally feel back in that time because all of that, like we said, the mall, like what a mall felt like then with K Jewelers and all the stuff in the
Right.
background, and that's where everybody went to go hang out, man. Especially when
Hmm.
you were, the mall rats cliche was a little off, I think, because they were a little older. They
Right.
were older to go other places. For us that were like between, let's say, 14 and 18, some of us didn't have cars yet, didn't know someone would take you somewhere. The mall was a safe place you could get dropped off. Mom was just at least, yeah, they leave you there, or you had a friend that could take you. So that's all dead. People don't do that anymore. It's nice
Well,
to see it though. Yeah.
as a person who frequented the mall that Mallrats was filmed, because it's only like 10 miles away from here.
Oh
Uh,
wow. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. In fact, I walked. A quick little side story, quick. I went there. B. Dalton's was there. Always went to the bookstore. Then I saw,
Mhm.
hey, there's a comic book store down there. I go wandering down, and it's like middle of the day, and the place is locked, tight, or drum. I go, this is funny. Why would they be closed in middle of the day when you know, people like you saw in Mallrats in that mall would be walking around like that. As Eden Prairie, that was not too far off. And of course, later on, I found out, oh, that was a movie set. Okay, who is this Kevin Smith guy? I hear he cries a lot. But no, but yeah, you got that blast of nostalgia. And as you're saying about the Olympics, it's like, yeah, that's when that was being made and such.
Mhm.
You had the '84 LA Olympics, and
Huge,
so
huge
yeah,
deal. Hmm.
so you saw
Yeah.
the signage in back there. Hap is wearing an '84, a very dirty and beaten '84 Olympics
Yep.
baseball cap. It's like, boy, that didn't last long. I tell you that. But so yeah, they're going to do those little nods in there because, well, yeah, in LA, those I'm sure there's a lot of pride in the fact, hey, we got the Olympics here. You know,
Yeah. Really good stuff. A lot of really fun elements for sure. I think the story is. It's one of these things where I feel like, especially if you love like the old sci-fi TV. I mentioned Star Trek
yeah,
briefly. Outer Limits, I think, is another great example. If you love the things that were like in concept, even better than what they could execute, Trancers is probably a perfect example of that. It's a perfect example of some great ideas and a great world and some different things that they can do. And on the low budget, it wasn't able to execute maybe as great as they would even have hoped for. And then
hmm
unfortunately, weren't able to get out into like a theatrical thing and really even capture even a bigger, wider audience. But it's found its
Yeah,
little niche. I'm happy to be part of it now.
yeah,
Uh,
and yeah, and to kind of piggyback on that one, what was I going to say? I was actually going to say something, but we were talking earlier about that film Noirish about it.
mhm.
If you like this film, if you like the Outer Limits, this would fit more into an Outer Limits universe than anything
Yep.
else. If you want to talk about '60s television, but I guess they did release a black and white version of this,
Hmm.
and now it has me intrigued. What would this look like, black and white, noirish looking science fiction, even more so than what we had there. And it's like I'm intrigued.
I'd want to redo the score also if I could, so that I could make the score feel a little bit more noir and not so
Hmm.
80s pop. But I
Right,
wouldn't be opposed to making a couple of those changes for sure.
right.
Get to my another last critique, I guess, or bigger critique would be the whole homelessness group. So
Hmm.
they're tracking down this ancestor. He's one of the other ancestors. He's among the homeless. He's a former baseball star. And they actually have a baseball. Jack Death doesn't even know what a baseball card is. So the fact that they're using that as a mechanism during the '80s was kind of fun. The scene's a little tedious. They're like drunk, so he's like throwing the bottle, being a pitcher. It went on a little too long. It was a little all of it was a little too much. Like we would just tweak a little bit of all that.
Right.
But basically, this is the climax of the movie. We're going to have this big confrontation because the police are there, led by Whistler in that guy's body, and the big confrontation. Who's going to run away and how it's all going to get. So yeah, it was good. I like the fact that they tried to come up with new elements
Hmm.
for all the ancestors. And yeah, we're in a future that's I guess it would be 50 years into the future that not everybody would totally understand. I actually think one of the criticisms, let's see, it would be the 23rd century. So I guess it's not, it's like 300 years in the future, isn't it? So never
Hmm.
mind. Sorry. 300 years in the future. Okay. So it would be a fun way to have elements that are brought up that people in the future have no idea. Because I got to be honest, we're already at the point now where very few people probably know much about baseball cards. Very few people probably know much about comic books. Like it's already become a much smaller niche
Right.
than it was even 10 years ago, 20 years ago for sure. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I like that
And those
element.
that do, a lot of them that do know, it's like, oh, I got it on my tablet or my iPad. It's like, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
You're not collecting or reading comics. If
Yeah.
that's the case, you have to have it in your hands. You have to smell the print. You have to turn the pages. That is comic. If you cannot pull it off the shelf and appreciate it in your hands, that's not comic. Collecting comics or reading comics. Uh, I can't understand anybody who could do that. I mean, unless it's something that was uber rare and hard to get, and you just wanted to see what the story was of something. But no, a lot of people just don't understand that what they have there. It's like, they're running around. They don't have cell phones, so they can't do those little quick calls, or they can't do GPS. That's why you need to have Helen Hunt. She's his GPS.
Yeah, she is quickly turned into the reluctant co-pilot and way
Hmm.
more valuable than sort of like the damsel in distress or any of the cliches that are in these normal type movies.
Hmm.
She's definitely the translation for Jack in this world that he's
Right,
kind of stuck in. So I really liked all that. I thought that actually works really,
right.
really well.
And if
Um,
there's anything that of her being a quote unquote damsel in distress, it's not because she's a damsel. It's more the fact that here she is as a 20th century girl living in the 20th century world, and all of a sudden the 23rd century invaded, and she's having to deal with concepts that's beyond what anybody's concept generally would be that we normally on the street and hanging out in punk clubs.
we just briefly talked about the poster and how much you loved
Oh.
the art. So let me
Hmm.
pull that back up. Yeah, fun stuff. Really cool design.
Oh.
But there's some other ones that are. Haven't you seen this one or not? Look at that.
Yep,
That is
that I think.
beautiful painted one, right?
Yeah, I think that's for the English release, if I remember right,
That's
because it's
really
actually got
really
a different
cool.
name. Hmm.
That definitely feels like comic book fantasy type art,
Oh.
comic book covers. Yeah, definitely nice. Like that Blade Runner feel.
Right.
Yeah, like
In
that.
fact, that looks like the Blade Runner comic, the big special edition one that
Yep.
they came out with
Yeah.
cover, and it's like, oh, I wonder where that's where they got that inspiration from. Which I can't blame them for, because it really packs a punch.
Future Cop. Here definitely the Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, sci-fi
Mm-hmm.
type stuff of its era, trying to capitalize from that angle as well. I thought was really cool. And then I
Like
just
a
thought this
teaser
one was
trailer.
just this was what teaser trailer,
Yeah, it looks like a teaser.
teaser
Like,
poster. Yeah, the
yeah,
early
thank you.
release.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that.
hmm
Mhm.
And then I thought this was just completely contrasting. All right, let's try this one. Wow, that was super cool, man. I was like, whoa, completely different feel in every way. Yeah, loved it. That was fun.
It's always interesting to see how other parts of the world do their promotion materials, like posters and such like that, because it definitely goes a different turn than what we're used to. And it's like we might look at it and say, "Oh, it's way too busy," but for them, it's like, "Oh, this is tame."
Yeah, marketing in
Right.
other places and other groups and stuff is it's such an interesting niche to try to understand. Definitely
Hmm.
outside of my wheelhouse. I do not totally get it. I am in awe of the art and all of
Hmm.
the style and stuff like that. So overall, how do you sort of like score the film, and how often do you kind of watch this movie?
I definitely have 7.5. I mean, I'm very close to 8 because of the concepts that they have in this film.
hmm
And, people want to sit back and say how simple, blah, blah, blah it is. It's like, well, really, you don't need to have a complex plot to have a good film and a good story. I mean, Batman '89. What is it? Young brat, rich parents get murdered by a thug. Guy finds out later the thug is a clown, and then they battle it out, and he wins at the end. What a simple concept, right? Which this has, but it has that moral and ethical dilemmas that are placed in there. It's like, what do you do with Whistler in the past? And spoilers. Don't keep on if you want to. Don't be surprised. Just pause or go over this part. No, when you only have one vial left, and it's like your choices are: you take it yourself, go back home after you kill an innocent man who happens to be possessed, or you choose to stay inside your ancestor and let this guy be free, right? And so you got those. If you want to start going into Star Trek, well, that's kind of a hard decision, because either way, somebody's going to suffer. It's going to be either the family and the detective, or it's going to be Phil that Jack is now in the body of. Which one is going to be the nobler sacrifice? Which one can be easily you can sleep with yourself easier at night with?
And see, that actually brings me to my biggest criticism is I didn't care for that part because they should have been able to just send someone else back with another vial, right?
Right. Yeah. Plot hole. Plot hole.
Yeah, so it's a big issue for me because I feel like he shouldn't get to stay because he's stealing some guy's body. It's a
Right.
very weird thing. Like, yeah, I don't like that part.
No.
So
And yeah, that has a
yeah,
problem, but at least they had the concept, though.
no. Again, this
Yep.
film is strongest in its sci-fi concepts
Mhm.
and just, I mean, just a lot of great elements. It really does.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I'm a tough critic, so I'm a more midland kind of guy on this
Mhm.
movie. So it's more like a 2.5 to 3 out of 5 stars for me. The old school, that's the old midland was
Oh,
like that's an okay movie. Was 3 out of 5. Like you could get that 6
yeah.
is used to not be hated on with that, but now that seems to be kind of faux pas. But I think it's solid enough. I think that also the rewatchability here is interesting because there are so many things coming at you. It's
Hmm.
kind of hard on just one viewing to totally gauge the first half of the movie, the setups and the callbacks and all that. But there are some major plot hole issues that
Yeah.
I can't ignore. And I will say the moral conundrum at the end. I'm like, oh wait, he should kind of been like, I don't want to go back. I want to stay. And then, of course,
Hmm.
the McNulty person's there, or whatever. No, you can't stay. And he's
Hmm.
like, I can't stay in Phil's body. It's his body. It's his life. I hope you have a good life. That kind of thing.
Hmm.
Take me with you, Jack. That's the normal tropes that
Right.
I expected. So the film was at least different in that regard, but it does create other moral and other contradictions and conundrums. But all in
Exactly.
all, man.
That's why I
Yeah.
gave it kind of a higher one on that one,
hmm
because one, the science fiction concepts
hmm
that they
hmm
had in there,
Yeah.
the rewatchability. I can sit
Mm.
back and watch it. How many times have I seen this film? I don't know. Maybe once a year. I kind of try to at least
Okay.
put it in. Gave me an excuse to do it again. Thank you for the excuse. Um, So the rewatchability, that's why I place it a little bit higher.
Yep.
That's why it's like 7.5. It'd be for me, it'd be closer than 8 if it wasn't for the fact that yeah, what you're saying at the end. I mean, at least they had that moral, ethical situation, but it's weak. It
Mhm.
needed work on that end, but at least it was there. And again, a for effort of trying something new, and that's the one thing I enjoy about this film the most. They were trying new things, not trying to copy others. It's like we want the feel, but we don't want copy paste.
Mhm.
And you take risks, and not all risks are that you're going to do is going to be knocked out of the park. But it's still going to sit you there and go, yeah, it's weak, but I applaud you. Thank you. Now let's see what we can do about this later on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
It's
You're on the
definitely.
right path.
Yeah. I think that's it for sure. And I'm thrilled that you kind of turned me on to it because it definitely made me a nice, enjoyable experience, which is definitely something you want these days. Like it's something I have some fun with, right?
Yeah.
And it was, especially if you're nostalgic for the 80s type stuff and some of those type science fiction tropes of that era of classic sci-fi from like the 60s, even like we talked about, or even the 80s where you get into like the Terminator, Blade Runner type stuff. This
Mhm.
film is kind of an amalgam of a lot of those things. And maybe that's a criticism for you. Maybe you just don't, you wish it would pick a lane a little bit.
Mhm.
I think it's trying to carve out its own identity of what it's trying to do,
Mhm.
and it evens itself out through the film. It kind of it finds where it wants to be. So I don't know how I'm going to feel watching sequels. We'll kind of see how they go from here because I feel like it's definitely set up for more adventures because Jack's still
Mhm.
out there and he would be the best person to send on another
Mhm.
ancestral hunt to deal with some sort of conflict with someone else who was able to hijack the technology.
Well, if you
And
want
I
a
feel
quickie, if you want a quickie, 1.5, Transits 1.5 is on Tubi, and it's a 24-minute long short. It
okay.
basically was done part because that was when Full Moon took over from Empire,
Yep.
and then wanting to relaunch things, and this was part of like a vignette of shorts into a movie, but it's released by itself, so it's a quick one. It's not as good, but it still has those elements, and and the reason why it's not so good is because they're trying to rush it into 24 minutes. But
Hmm.
you have McNulty back. You have both McNultys back, which is great. And you have, of course, the singer from Tony Orlando and Dawn. She's back. Jack, of course, is back. Helen Hunt
Yeah.
is back. All in that one aspect is obviously she must have liked it enough to be being in this 2, 3, and 1.5. So at least Helen Hunt, thank you for that. My take on her, by the way, she's the girl next door, and the girl next door is far sexier than the most beautiful runway model in the world, in my opinion. So,
Uh, anyway, so now it's actually one of those sort of like just no name D movies that no one knows much about. I think if you really like sort of like that middle tier of sci-fi stuff for whatever, especially concepts like Free Jack or
yeah,
Demolition Man, things like that, where
hmm
they're fun and they have their moments and whatever, and they showcase different things. This is sort of like an uber low budget in that sort of class of things, and that's
right,
probably the best way to put this film on that kind of thing. I'm very middling on it, but I think the rewatchability is there. We'll see how that kind of plays out over time. But I'm
yeah,
glad that we were able to check that one off my to-do list of something I've never seen before. So I appreciate
yeah.
that from Baron for sure. So, uh,
I'm glad you liked it. I'm going to have a new system here. I'm going to go buy popcorn. So I vote this movie 3 buckets in a bag of popcorn.
3 buckets in a bag
Because
sounds good.
because it's a popcorn film. It's how much popcorn you're going to be eating through this whole thing.
Ooh, all
Three,
right.
three buckets in a bag there,
I
and I
like it.
think that's pretty good. So I'm putting it onto the level of a popcorn film. Yeah, that's why I give it that little bit higher rating because
No, there's no just
yeah,
everyone can have their own way. Like I said, you're
yeah.
old enough to remember too when we all had like newspaper reviews, and that was the 5-star
Oh,
system, and a five was like this once every couple years. It was these class,
hmm
So I'm that old school critic. That's what I grew up in and
right,
with and for. And my first writing gig was like that. Actually, they were a 4-star system, and they got
oh,
mad if
really?
you try to do half stars because they were like, "Oh no, we don't want." I'm like, "All right, whatever, man. I'm fine. There's just not very many. If y'all are giving out fours way too easy, then because they're
Yeah,
fours are the great movies that are gonna be like the Oscar kind of. These are like the
hmm
great movies. Five is an elite movie. That's
hmm
like the best of all time, top 25, top
right,
50 debates. Those are like. Um, So yeah, it was a good time, man. Thank you so much for doing this, man. I'll put
Oh,
everything in the description there, folks, so you can make sure you connect to Baron. He's over with Mike on Pacific every week. They're doing stuff. He's got his own things going on. And by the way, I've lifted the Baron AI music over on Talk Hard for a while, so that'll be part of what I'll be doing there,
oh,
using a segment of one of those songs for the theme for. I usually try to rotate things out every few months or whatever, so it'd be kind of fun to do
yeah.
that because you've done some creative stuff over there, man. It's good to
Well,
see.
thank you so much. Yeah, and like I said, I have a whole library. Talk to me, and I can see what I can give you or out of my library too. So, so you can get the clean copies. You know,
Sounds
where
good.
just like the MP4, no MP3s. Sorry,
All
MP3s
right.
on that one. But thank you so much. Very kind. And yeah, the basically the Ghost on the Wild Ride. That's one of my favorite ones that came out. I can't believe how good that came out. It's like whoa,
Yeah, fun stuff. Fun
yeah.
stuff for sure. Well, folks, we appreciate you hanging out with us. Definitely my first time watching experience to be able to share that with you guys. Again, total credit to Baron for bringing this film even to my attention. And thanks to Tubi for having it for free because that made it even faster and easier to get my hands on it to watch it. And everybody out there, you guys to be blessed. Talk hard. Stay strong. Until next time, I am Pops.